Today, our guest is Jay Prock. He's the president of Tidewater Staffing. It's a family-owned workforce solution provider.
When we have our on-site coordinators run the job-specific orientation, they're already familiar with the job site and know what kinds of expectations of the type of work and the expectations for the PPE are going to be.
It's just a family-owned business, right? At the end of the day, you've got complete authority, you've got complete decision-making.
Not only are you getting an individual who knows what the ship repair industry is like, but has dedicated a little bit of extra time to bettering themselves so if they can be a better employee for you.
Jay, does that mean you don't have a sales force at all? You are the sales guy?
So we don't do a lot of cold calling. What we focus really hard at is customer retention and ultimate customer service.
Welcome to another episode of Humans of Staffing. I'm Sammy Singh along with my co-host TJ Sammy. Today our guest is Jay Prock. He's the president of Tidewater Staffing. It's a family-owned workforce solution provider in Hampton Roads, Virginia. Welcome, Jay.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. We've had, this is our second shot of trying to do this, and it's amazing how many technical, difficulties one can have when you're trying to connect everybody. That goes back into the first and foremost question is, Jay, where are you located? What do you do? And give us more about Tidewater Staffing.
Sure. Kind of funny. We specialize in blue collar and kind of wrench turner type employees. So, what am I not? I'm not a techie. We like you mentioned, we're in Hampton Roads, Virginia, so it's the Port of Virginia, and we specialize in ship repair, shipbuilding, logistics, and manufacturing. And we're specific to the Port of Virginia. I live in Virginia Beach. I've lived in Virginia Beach most of my life. Spent a little bit of time down in Central Florida, but it is a family business that my sister and I bought from my dad in 2018. We put about 3,000, 4,000 people to work a year. And our motto is to put people to work and do the right thing every day. And that's what we try to do.
Isn't that the fundamental of every single business? If done right, do the right thing by them. But hence, it's not the easiest. But let's dive a little bit deeper, Jay. So on my side, of course, both of us, TJ and I, try to balance it out to where it's really our curiosity on every type of business that exists. And you were very unique. You and I spoke maybe about couple of months ago, because everyone's been really busy. We've been trying to schedule, this podcast for a while. So what really stood out to me is, how did it start? Give us a little bit of history. Your dad started it. Why this niche? Because everybody will try to do 4 other types of verticals, do 3 others, right? That's just a typical way of dealing with things. Let's expand fast. We can do it all. Give us a little bit of those fundamentals and principles, how your dad started and how it got here.
Sure. Focus has been really important to what we do, and sticking to our niche has really not always been easy. We get asked to not only expand to different verticals within staffing, but also within different geographies. Dad started the company in 92 when he had been working for Abacus, which was another staffing firm. And Abacus did a lot of things, but Dad was in charge of the maritime division, where we had a few hundred people in mostly a shipyard that at the time was known as Metro Machine. And in the late 80s, early 90s, the Navy made the decision to transition a role they called Fire Watch from having Navy sailors do it to privatizing it. And so that was a real opportunity for staffing firms to move in and provide this temporary assignment for people to stand next to a welder or a hot work operator with the fire extinguisher and be prepared to extinguish a fire, which is in accordance with NAPT standard items, in case there was an incipient fire. And it took a lot of people to make that happen when boats were in, and nobody wanted to deal with the unemployment costs when the boats had left. And so the role of temp labor kind of came into fruition there. When Abacus went public, his boss at the time brought him in and said, I got good news and I got bad news. What's going on? He said, well, good news is we're going public. Hooray! We're all going to be rich. He says, bad news is you ain't coming with us. Oh. So he took out a loan from his boss at the time to factor his payroll. Got a cheap office in a kind of rougher part of town in Chesapeake, which is kind of central to the ship repair industry, and a couple of the shipyards that were there, Metro and a few others. And that's how Dad struck out on his own. And over the years, the industry has kind of evolved to be much less of temp laborers, much less of the kind of abused stepchild of the industry, to a real integral part of how ship repair and shipbuilding gets done. And so that was when my sister and I came on board about 2010, 2011. And we've worked real hard at keeping people safe, keeping people working, and putting as many of them to work as we can. And those are the three pillars that kind of drive our business today. Keeping people safe, keeping them on the job, and doing it as much and as fast and as furious as we can to keep our customers successful. Those are the things that drive the business, because workers' comp insurance is extraordinarily expensive. It's their second largest cost of doing business after payroll. And then unemployment insurance cost is really expensive. That comes third after the workers' comp. And then, of course, the more people that we can do it safely with, then the more consistently, the more money everybody makes. One of my favorite things with the temp that gets upset with you, because you always got upset temps. Somebody's always getting kinds of reason to be upset. Hey, man or lady, we don't get paid until you do.
That's true.
So that kind of in a nutshell is where we come from.
So Jay, you grew up essentially watching your dad go through this transition. Did you know at that point in time that you would one day take over this business?
Had no idea. It was one of the coolest manipulations I've ever been a part of. He taught me a lot of lessons early on. Never really let us see the sweat and the fear that goes into true entrepreneurship, even though he experienced them. And did a really great job of staying focused on the important things, making it to as many of our ball games as he could, supporting us through the, activities and school and things that we wanted to do and accomplish. And it really wasn't until I got my business degree and I was a couple of years outside of college that he called me up, even though I'd worked for the company off and on in the summers, cutting grass or going on random assignments or clean up trash cans at the office, that kind of stuff. It wasn't really until a couple of years after I graduated school that he said, hey, I'm looking at retiring, and if you think you have any interest in the business at all, it's now or never. Because if it's not you, it's going to be somebody else, and it's a 5-year transition, and it takes time. And one of the many things he's done well over time is he's had a really good sense for advisors and keeping people who give him good advice around and close. And that was, one of the bits of good advice that he received, which was make sure to take time and think about your transition. And so that's what he did. And Nikki and I were lucky enough to be a part of that transition. And here we are. I still take all the same phone calls from him, and we still exchange business advice back and forth, which is really him telling me what to do. Only difference now is I got to pay him a quarterly check for it.
So Jay, what surprised you the most? I mean, here you are out of college, couple of years, you've seen your dad go through this, but not really the true, stress of payroll, stress of entrepreneurship, and on and so forth. You take over. What surprised you the most?
How many seemingly well-established companies were not really well-established, and how many people are willing to lie to you. Had a lot of people over the years short us on money, string us out for longer than they said they would. The raw amount of lying, cheating, and stealing in the real world was something that took a little bit of adjusting to get used to. And that's really both from the temp side and the customer side, One of the things we pride ourselves in is making sure that when we place somebody on an assignment, we dovetail our safety programs and and that our coordinators are involved with the deck plate supervisors and project managers that are directly supervising them. That was a big part of the, dovetailing our safety programs. Also helped keep our customers honest about if they asked for a fire preventer, that they weren't having the fire preventer also run a power tool or jackhammer or do manual labor. Because the pay rates are different, the risk tolerances are different, the type of employees you're going to put out for a job are different. And the PPE that we provide for them is going to be different. That was a bigger surprise, and sometimes even to this day still surprises me who it is that ends up short on their bills sometimes, or the fantastical stories that we get from our employees.
So as they say, it wasn't me, it was them, right? It's that story. Within that, when I think of this industry that you're in, shipbuilding, you really have a few main ports, right? So is your customer always the government, or is it also a lot of private entities that are subbing from the government?
Oh, exclusively private entities. When you talk about government versus private, there are publicly held companies that we service, but they are in the private sector servicing the government customer. Ultimately, when we're on a naval vessel doing work, yes, the ultimate customer is the Navy. So we have to adhere to, like I said earlier, NAVSEA standard items and the policies and procedures that the Navy sends down the food chain to their sub and prime contractors. So we end up in sometimes a subcontractor relationship if we're working directly for a prime. There are other relationships where we are multiple steps down, subcontractors, if you will. But always we end up answering to a private entity, which is a little bit of a niche for us. That is also one that we work hard to stay in, because when you become a government contractor, the levels and complications of the business really, really increase. And I'm smart enough to know that I can handle the people aspect of what's going on. And I'm also smart enough to recognize where I ain't all that smart, which is dealing with the contracts and the complexities and all of the acronyms that come with dealing with the government. So we leave that to our customers. They do that part of it, and then we end up trying to be the strength behind or the muscle behind their contractual wins and make sure that they get their tasks accomplished.
Most of the temps, then, we believe, are going to different places, right? Is it typically in teams, or is it typically individuals?
Typically individuals. It's rare that we have them move in teams.
So typically individuals going to certain tasks. And what kind of tools or technology are you using to make sure that they get there, besides telling them, what are you using in your tool set that says, so you're not chasing them every single morning to see did they make it to the job? What all types of assistance do you give to get them there?
Those are our on-site coordinators. One of the advantage that we have of being a small business, family-owned operation, is that I don't have major corp to answer to. I don't have, franchisees and those kinds of things to pay. And so I take those sorts of operating costs and I overstaff. And I have more staff on hand in my 4 offices than most of my competition combined. And I use that extra staff to not only have plenty of people within the office to do the recruiting, but we have a whole nother layer of employees that work directly for Tidewater that operate on site, making sure that they take either new employees or transitioning employees from one job to another. And they take the hand of the employee and they take the hand of the supervisor, they put them together and they say, hey, this is Joe. Joe, this is your supervisor. And they make sure they go to the right and appropriate, not only shipyards, but also within the shipyards, you got the piers and the vessels that they need to find the right places to go to. And it can be a complicated environment. So those on-site coordinators are a big deal to us.
That's why that entire space is dead already, right? In a lot of places, because everybody's cut back on staff, internal. Very few people are actually checking people in anymore. And in your such a niche, that's what keeps you around, right? I look at it that way. So that's a big, big deal for someone who's starting a job.
It's a big deal for somebody who's starting a job. It's a big deal for a few reasons. And it's also fun because we're, in a way, almost forced into it. So there are a couple of pieces there. One, it's a big deal for employee engagement, right? Make people feel like they are valued. The person that helped you through your orientation, your job-specific orientation, you're likely going to have interactions with that person out on the yard as well. While they might not do all of the recruiting aspect of it, we try to have them run our job-specific orientation so there's a familiar face. When you have a familiar face, Joe isn't just letting down some amorphous client or host employer out there somewhere. They'd be letting down Cedric, their on-site coordinator who they've already developed a relationship with. The second big piece of this is, again, focused on safety, right? When we have our on-site coordinators run the job-specific orientation, they're already familiar with the job site and know what kinds of expectations of the type of work and the expectations for the PPE are going to be. Different jobs require different PPE. Different yards require different colors of hard hats. I mean, the list goes on and on about the specifics of the needs. And oftentimes, somebody will forget a pair of safety glasses or not be wearing their steel toes or something to that effect. When we have an on-site coordinator, it's a whole lot cheaper for them to have a case full of extra PPE and just hand them a pair of safety glasses than it is to suffer through the disappointment of an employee being turned around after having gotten up at 4:30 in the morning to make a 5:30, 6 a.m. start time, go in the dark through the pass office, into the turnstiles, make it on the pier, and then say, oh my gosh, I forgot my safety glasses. No problem. Here you go. We got you. Go to work, right? So they arrive to work safely with the right PPE. Between those two, that really, they end up more than paying for themselves with those two advantages. But the third piece that's really interesting is the internet connectivity in the vessels and on the piers is terrible. So a lot of companies get, maybe Wi-Fi fed to them as part of host employers in the light industrial space, right? We don't get that advantage. We have to have that manual touch point because we don't get Wi-Fi, or I can't just plug into a jack out on the pier. And sure as heck can't plug into it on an Navy vessel. They got a real problem if you're trying to do stuff like that. And so because of that, those are the three biggest reasons that we give a real competitive advantage and we think are very much worth being overstaffed with those on-site coordinators.
Typically, an on-site starts the day early, and are they able to go to many different, do you have some sort of matrices that say, hey, typically they're able to check in 10 different sites a day, 5 different sites, or does it all depend? It's variable.
It's definitely variable. Naval Operations Base Norfolk, for example, has 14 piers, and at any given point in time can have as many as 28 different vessels in there.
Wow.
Any one of the vessels can have any number of operations happening at any given point in time. So call it maybe 20 or 30 different types of contracts going on them. So it very much depends on where the work is happening, what base it's happening at, and what type of work is happening. Typically, as an example, if we're running a coatings and preservation contract on one of those big bases, it's likely that there's only going to be 1 or 2 coatings customers that are operating in the base at any given point in time, because every vessel has a little bit of a different life cycle for their maintenance and availability. NOB is an extreme example and is the biggest one. So you might have 2 or 3 different check-ins that happen at NOB, but because it's so big, it might take 2 different coordinators to do it from end to end. There are smaller yards where you can cover more ground with less people, but the average yard is probably about, maybe 5 to 10 boats a piece.
Wow. Does it require a lot of clearance to get in through? I could only imagine. So you've got to have you got to have authorization for not only the on-site, but also the individual you've already done. The onsite is equally important for you to hire people who can make it to the naval yards. Otherwise, it's of no use.
Yeah, big time. And that's a big part of why we stay focused on this niche. And one of the things that we deliver to our customers really well is the management of those credentials. I'll use NOB again as an example because it's a pretty good one and low-hanging fruit that people can understand. So in order to get onto the base itself, you need what's called a DBIDS credential, Department of Defense Biometric Identification System. And it's just a, kind of like TAC card or something like that. That gets you onto the base. Prior to getting onto the vessel, you have to have an access list sent to the Mid-Atlantic Regional Maintenance Command, MARMAC, who handles the contractual agreements with all of the contractors and who they decide to let on to the vessels themselves. So you might be able to get on the base, but if your ship's access isn't up to date, you ain't getting on the Mesa Verde. You know what I mean? Once you get onto the vessel, you've then got to manage the credentials of the job that they're doing. So you can't be operating in the Port of Virginia with very few exceptions, without a maritime OSHA 10-hour class and be a card-carrying individual. That's a day and a half's worth of class that costs about $280. We give that class to our employees for free if they're working for Tidewater. I've got 3 certified individuals on site that have their OSHA Train the Trainers certifications. And so we're running classes for that about once a week. And we'll put anywhere from 20 to 40 people in a class at a time. I've got a whole training facility over here with a mock shipboard environment where we have a stairwell, a gangway, a NAVT standardized tank hole that they have to get into to check they have a fear of confined spaces. And so if they're going to do like a fire watch job out on the Mesa, you've got their access squared away, but you've also got to have their Ocean Maritime 10-hour badge, and you've got to have a fire watch certification card on them so that if a MARMAC representative walks up and says, "Hey, sir or ma'am, can I see your credentials?" they can pull it out of their badge holder and show them what class they took, where it was taken, and who certified them to what standards, in accordance with your company standards, for the fire watch and fire prevention training. And that's the lowest level entry position that we have. And it takes me about 2 weeks to spin someone up from 0 credentials to fully trained, capable, and able to walk onto a boat and go get that work done.
Very interesting, because that's what I was going to ask. I'm like, how do you source your talent, right? Because you're sourcing them and you've got a 2-week training program for those entry-level type of positions, and then you probably have to upskill, and there's probably very specific type of positions that require a skill set that is probably very difficult to find. I mean, this day and age, I would imagine. Is that one of your challenges, or are there enough folks out there with that type of experience?
All the time. And you really nailed it, TJ. So one of the challenges that we've overcome here specific to us here in the port is that upskilling thing. The idea of taking the fire preventers or the fire watch at the entry level and seeing what we can do for the ones that are performing well. And what we've done is we've taken some courses that we've modeled after the Association for Materials for Performance and Preservation. That organization is called AMP. And so AMP has laid out a few different courses that you can stair-step these individuals towards getting certifications for, like spraying and blasting, which are the upper echelon of skill sets for preservation employees. But we do really basic and entry level, so we can take a fire preventer who's got all these credentials and we spent all this time getting access, and let's say they're doing well, but the boat goes out and they're looking for their next opportunity. Well, the next time we put in work, we want to put in work for a little bit, more money if we can. And so we want to give them some skills to justify that they can do so. So we developed a entry level or an introductory level painting course and an introductory level power tooling course where they can learn to strip the metal of the old paint, and then where they can learn how to appropriately apply these pretty technical epoxy coatings to the vessels. And with those skill sets and with our little certification in hand, we can then go to the customer and say, "Hey, look, not only are you getting an individual who knows what the ship repair industry is like, but has dedicated a little bit of extra time to bettering themselves so if they can be a better employee for you. That's a big upsell for us and for our customers.
It's very interesting. You've got to have intimate knowledge about all of this to make this happen. I mean, and I would imagine, are the requests coming in from, I guess in this case, is this publicly traded companies who are employing you, right? Your talent to go out there. Are your systems talking to each other? Do they know who's going and what credentials they have, what their history is? Or how does that process work today for you guys? Because I see so many qualification criteria you got to go through. Then there's this whole logistical aspect of the base, the pier, the ship, the vessel. And then, I mean, it's very, very interesting, very, very, very detailed and deep as to how this works. So are these systems talking?
We sign a lot of indemnification agreements. We don't tie into each other's systems in that sense. It would be really neat and would maybe be certainly a technological leap forward for the industry to get to that place where we could pull from singular databases. I serve on the Virginia Ship Repair Foundation's board, and I circle in a lot of these conversations about what it takes to get ship repair to the next level of efficiency. And I'll be the first to tell you, we are a slow adoption industry. That can be frustrating at times for somebody like myself who grew up with of the digital age. And there are efforts to get us closer to that type of thing. But the real answer right now is that they being the prime contractors, hold their subcontractors and subcontract relationships. They hold us accountable through those indemnification agreements and periodic audits, periodic and random. So at any given point in time, we have to have our appropriate documentation housed in place in our applicant tracking system, such that on command or on demand, we can present that information for our customer, who can then turn around and present that information to their customer. And if we can't do that, we don't get the business anymore.
What skill, if you had to tell someone, because this could be a lot of interest to a lot of folks trying to do jobs like this. It's just, and it's not your run-of-the-mill job. It's hands-on somebody. What are the 2 or 3 skill sets that they need? And they'll be very successful at a job with you guys.
To be fully transparent, barriers to entry are pretty low. If you can show up on time and follow direction, the jobs themselves are pretty straightforward. What becomes a challenge is for those that have gotten kind of too comfortable in their lives, because all of our jobs are exposed to the elements. You're going to be hot and sweaty on days. On other days, you're going to be cold and wet, and it's going to be early in the morning, and it's going to be a challenge mentally from that perspective. But what's really rewarding about these things is that if you can navigate those challenges, you're part of keeping the fleet serviceable and in action just as much as any other employee of the Navy is. We're a big part of the naval infrastructure that keep the world safe, that keep goods flowing through the ports, that keep the bad guys at bay that don't like the attitude and freedoms of the United States. I'm extraordinarily proud of being a part of the strength behind the fleet. And I really try to express that to the employees. I still pop in on orientations just to kind of give my 2 cents and stay familiar with the people that are coming to work. And that's what I tell them. Guys, girls, you are getting ready to get into the ecosystem that is part and parcel with the biggest, baddest war machines on the face of this planet. And you're a part of keeping them afloat. And you ought to take a lot of pride in that, because I know I certainly do. The other raw point of self-interest for the employees is that we have a lot of room for advancement. I have so many Tidewater success stories over the years It's hard to even count. The one that just sticks out to me had an employee start at like $7.35 an hour as a laborer, worked his way all the way up through a big painting and coatings company who actually ended up just selling to a private equity firm early last year. He exited that organization as part owner of a $22 million sale. And he got his start at Tidewater Staffing.
That's a great story. Now, when you say the big machine, so, folks like us, the normal people that go about in San Diego Harbor, we really get in awe of looking at the ships. I mean, these things are just marvelous machines that just, which one, now you've grown up around it, which is the one ship or submarine that just absolutely took your breath away? And you looked at it and said, oh my God, this is insane.
Oh, it's the aircraft
Is there
carriers.
one that really picked? Is it?
Oh, it's always the aircraft carriers. And it's one thing to see them pier side, but it's a whole nother thing to see them in dry dock. And really, that's any of the boats. But the sheer scale of a CVN that you have to go down 5 flights of steps just to get down to the bottom of the dry dock. And then you look up and you can see a propeller that's, 70, 80 feet across. I mean, the sense of scale is just amazing. Absolutely amazing. When we talk about the kind of the half-lives or the time for which the vessels, the nuclear vessels come in for their RCOHs or refueling and complex overhauls, that's the time where we get to see the aircraft carriers in their full display. That's when they're in the dry docks, and you just don't, it's hard to appreciate the scale. It's like looking at the Grand Canyon. You walk up to the edge of the rim and it's just jaw-dropping. Those are the boats that always impress me the most.
And do you typically know what's coming in so you can get up there and go watch them come in, watch them go out? Does it still thrill you to see that? Like, how just like kids, I still enjoy watching a plane take off. It's just fun. Still is.
Oh, big time. Absolutely. I am watching plane takes off. I just took my kids to their first air show this past year. Watching the Navy show off their air dominance is pretty impressive. And we have a little 15-foot whaler that I take my kids out sometimes. And we can go out of our little river and we can see the big boats coming back and forth. Or if we're on the beach, on the bay, or even in the ocean, you can see them going past. And it's something special to be able to turn to the kids. My kids are 9, 8, 7, and 5. So they still think I'm still pretty cool in their book, And it's something special to turn to them, or if we're driving over the bridges where you can see where they're working, or if we're driving past them on the boats, it's pretty special to tell them, hey, look, that's where Daddy and his employees work. And those are the boats that I talk about that we keep afloat. Those are the things that keep our way of life intact. Ooh.
So looking at that side, is there a story that comes to mind, and you can share or not share, of the craziest experience that maybe a temp had where you sent him out and you couldn't believe this happened?
Yeah, there's a really fun one that was a cool turning point for us a couple of years ago. That's both a story of serendipity and of safety kind of wound together into one. We had an employee who was walking in the dry dock underneath a LHD, which is a type of smaller version of an aircraft carrier, and a piece of metal fell from another subcontractor who was working on the flight deck of that vessel. It fell off of the flight deck and fell and struck him in the top of the head, knocked his hard hat off, and when he hit the ground, he hit his head a second time. If you picture as somebody falls, he kind of bounced his head, right? At the time, he was wearing a traditional hard hat. And what I mean by that, it's a 4-point suspension system that sits just on top of the head. but no sort of chin strap or anything else that goes with it. And typical, I mean, it's very industry standard. It's, ANSI rated and approved and all this stuff. It meets the bare minimum threshold. Well, when Rashid went through his 6 months of light duty with us, between his experience share and an experience that I had in an accident of back in my time, we made the conscious decision as an organization to level up the amount of head protection that we were putting people to work with. So not only was it an incident that was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that of all the places and all the times, Rashid, you had to be walking at that place and time when this piece of metal happened to come through and hit him just at the right place. But man, thank God you had your hard hat on to begin with, because people take them off all the time. If he had been one of those people, he'd be dead. Fortunately, he had the wherewithal to keep his hard hat on. But the problem was he went through so much of a recovery because of the second impact. So the hard hats that we put people out in now are from a company called Hex Armor. They are 6-point, not 4-point suspension. They are more rounded and come with a better, more ergonomic shape, both for fit and for impact deflection. And they come with a chin strap, so that if Rashid had been wearing that style of hard hat, it would have bounced cleaner off his head initially. He would have kept his hard hat on, and his second impact wouldn't have been as bad. And so that's one of the wildest, most recent ship repair stories that I got for you that's been impactful for our organization.
Beyond that yard, is there another yard that either you're looking at or because that's your niche, that's your specialization, and you have to stay within that, right? That's the focus. But is there focus to get outside of just Virginia itself?
I read a book. It talked about the insanity of growth for growth's sake. There is an enormous push for entrepreneurs these days. Small giants. It's called Small Giants. And there's an enormous concept of growth for growth's sake and a big push for entrepreneurs to continue to grow. After reading Small Giants, and this is 7, 8, maybe 10 years ago now, by Bo Burlingham, it demonstrated to me that you can have an amazing organization with great culture, provide benefits to those whom otherwise maybe wouldn't have either as good of benefits, or in our case, a lot of temps don't have benefits at all. You can provide benefits that are beyond just health and wellness, but we also do telehealth. We do all kinds of things. The big thing right now this season is hoodie sweatshirts. I spent $17,000 on hoodies that went out to all the temps and our customers just as a token of appreciation. We do Christmas bonuses. We do grill out sessions at the office and outside of the yards during the summertime. I can't do those things at scale. I specifically fight the urge to grow from the standpoint of geographically, or feel like I need to go chase the next shiny thing when it comes to the next vertical, or the next kind of maybe we could do that type of customer. I work hard to fight those urges, because I know that by saying yes to those types of opportunities, I'm saying no to some of the opportunities that currently make Tidewater special and will continue to make Tidewater special. And those are heartfelt, long thought through decisions that, have become easier with time. But when it comes to answering the question of, are we growing? We grow, and we have aspirations to do a little bit different things. We are in the process of getting our facility clearance so that we can do cleared placements. We have expanded our offerings with our training facility that's now 4 or 5 years old. But when it comes to expanding beyond ship repair, shipbuilding, logistics, and manufacturing in Southeast Virginia, I'm not really interested. I'm interested in making the Port of Virginia the best damn port in the country.
Love that analogy. Love it. And it's very refreshing to hear, Jay. It is. Because all of us are caught up in this whirlwind of growth, growth, growth. And most of the time, that will compromise quality of life, quality of work, quality of many other things, right? That's what some of the cultures have thrived on, Japanese in particular. Systematically building something of quality and going slow. And in the end, you're a giant in your space, but you don't need it to be the biggest space on earth. You need it to be what's edible to you.
And it's just a family-owned business, right? At the end of the day, you've got complete authority, you've got complete decision-making ability, and you and your sister can decide what the direction needs to be. I think what we see in the U.S. now is investments and private equity and VCs coming in, and you've got a 3 to 5 year run rate of grow, 3x, 5x, 10x. Hence, you see
flip.
what you see in the stock market. Yep. It's the wild, wild west. You guys have done a very systematic, planned, you know what your purpose is. You know your field, right? You know what that is. And there are no outside influences that can, frankly, they might try to influence you, but ultimately you guys are the decision makers and say, hey, we're going to stay true to our core. So is your growth today then, Jay, the growth, let's say, I'm just making this up, let's say you're planning 15 to 20% growth. Is part of the challenge just the talent or just the industrial, the specialized vertical you're in that location? Where is that challenge for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting space because so much of it is determined by the availability of work from the government's perspective. So we do hit a ceiling when it comes to the amount of market share that we can really ultimately take up. What I like to think of a lot of doing is using Tidewater as a foothold in the industry to springboard people into other positions of authority, and maybe even oftentimes it's into positions that customers within customers' infrastructure to where they can continue to build on their own personal growth trajectories and stuff. And when that happens, when I get to go see on a deck plate and I go see a supervisor that started with Tidewater, man, that's a good day. And and it's also a longtime customer of Tidewater. We do that with both our staff. When I've got a young lady who works at a customer now who's been there 4 or 5 years, who we trained as a recruiter, and she was recruited from our office to go handle our customer's office. And now she's head of human resources for that customer. Those sorts of things. I mean, the seeds of Tidewater are everywhere in the Port of Virginia. And that's the sort of growth and experiences that really make my heart sing, because while I can't necessarily offer unlimited trajectory in a company that I have specifically made the decision not to chase exponential growth, I can offer continued growth within the industry of ship repair and shipbuilding to people who might not have ever considered it before. To that end, I'd also like to take a quick second and comment on even personal growth. I serve on the Virginia Ship Repair Foundation Board, and our focus is workforce development. So growing personally and professionally is oftentimes, or maybe sometimes looked over. It can be more than just growing your own personal organization. I've grown as an individual and as a really more of my community service muscle. One of the things I'm particularly excited about, the VSRF is getting ready to roll out a Virginia Ship Repair Foundation endowment fund and scholarship. And I've been instrumental, been a big part of the team that's working to bring that to fruition. That endowment fund and those scholarships will go out to individuals that are looking to upskill and stay or enter the ship repair and shipbuilding industry. So like, to me, sure, I've got a great organization that pulls in tons of people, pulls in tons of talent into the ship repair industry. But even outside of my industry or my company, within the industry, I continue to serve to make sure that, again, the Port of Virginia stays strong and competitive. And those are the types of growth that have been most rewarding to me, on top of having a rewarding and successful company.
Jay, does that mean you don't have a sales force at all? You are the sales guy?
I do a lot of sales.
Right.
But my operations
then you
individuals
don't
are
really
super
need
important
to
too.
have.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of cold calling, and we don't do. My operations people are very, very important, and we treat them really, really well. A big part of their job in operations is the customer service aspect. So we don't do a lot of cold calling or reaching out to people who don't use staffing services. What we focus really hard at is customer retention and ultimate customer service, because really the pool of potential customers is limited, and can be a lot of the same people over and over again as they hop to different locations or different subcontractors. So establishing, maintaining, and treating people fair and right just continues to pay dividends. Like, I don't mean to sound like I'm any sort of saint or anything. I've certainly made my fair number of mistakes over the years. But it is a industry where your reputation means a lot, and I work hard at maintaining a good one.
That goes a long way. Now, between you and your sister, how do you guys divide the roles?
She focuses predominantly on HR, staff, and workers' comp relations and handling those claims. I focus primarily on finances, sales, customer service, and maintaining our relationships with our customers.
Who's older? How are you guys? What's the age gap?
13 months, and I'm older by just that little bit.
So you're literally twins. Now, does your dad ever come around still and hang out?
One of the best gifts he ever gave us was in about 2015, he stopped coming to the office. One of the ways that I knew that I had made it was I called him one afternoon for advice, and he didn't get back to me until he was off of the golf course. I said, "Where you been all day?" He said, "I've been on the golf course. You don't need me for more than, I can be gone for 3-4 hours. You'll be all right." Oh, that was probably one of the nicest compliments I ever got from him.
Yes, there you go. So you both have, you floated the ship on your own, as they say, both of you. What a pride for
Yep.
your father to have both his kids running it, his legacy, what he built, and you now being an entrepreneur, understand the blood, sweat, and tears it takes to get it there and what he did to build it from a ground up. So kudos to him. This is equal kudos to him.
Yeah, we got enough grandkids to keep him busy these days. I've got 4. My sister's got 4 and a step daughter, and then my brother's got 1 as well. So he's got damn near a baseball team to keep him busy.
And besides this, Jay, are you on your side? Are you a golfer as well? What's your passion?
My handicap is 16.6. They recruit me often for for some scrambles, because I can hit the ball a long way, but I can't chip or putt to save my life.
Welcome to
enjoy
that
playing.
Party.
Yeah, right.
That's a normal doing.
So I enjoy playing, but I certainly would never consider myself a talented golfer.
So, Jay, what kind of benefits do you provide to your temps and employees?
Well, besides what I was describing earlier about doing what we can with the upskilling and keeping them working, the benefits for our employees are health, dental, vision, and telehealth and telemedicine, and those become available to them on their very first paycheck. We have been offering that for years now, probably 5 or 6 years. And that's a major medical benefits plan that's ACA compliant and everything else. But the challenge with that is, like any other major medical plan, it's a deduction out of their paycheck. So $30, $40 a month, depending on the size of the family, types of coverages, and those sorts of things have to come out of their paycheck. And these guys and girls aren't really readily excited about doing that. About 6 or 8 months ago, I came across a different kind of plan that we've implemented that is so exciting, and has taken our participation in our benefits programs just through the roof. We used to have about 25 to 30 or so individuals of the 600 or so that we have in the field that are participating in the major medical plan. We found this new type of benefit that uses pre-tax dollars to pay for an Aflac style supplementary plan and runs an algorithm every single week for every single employee to see if we use those pre-tax dollars, if that employee will see a marginal increase in pay. And if that answer is yes, they get coverage from that supplemental plan, either on top of the major medical that they've chosen, or even in spite of not having any of the other coverage. So every employee gets the opportunity to get something if they're paying taxes. Our biggest gap are the people that claim exempt, which is about 200 or so within the population. So we took our participation rate from about 25 to 30 individuals on the major medical plans alone to we now have about 300 to 350 people every single week participating in some level of healthcare coverage. And I don't know any other staffing firm in the area. I just don't have enough expertise, globally or nationally or whatever. But I can tell you for certain there is not another staffing agency in Southeast Virginia that has those kinds of participation numbers. So the benefits of Tidewater about being with a company that cares about them, being with a company that keeps them working, being with a company that keeps them safe when they're on the job and appropriately equipped with the PPE. And then on top of all of that, they get the added benefits of healthcare, dental, vision, major medical, and the telehealth and telemental health that comes with that package. That's the best. That's what we do. That's putting people to work and doing the right thing every day.
Oh, that is impressive. And now, is this one of those plans that actually increases the pay? It is, right? Where if you get the pre-tax dollars, you get less tax coming out, and sometimes you may get more of a pay than less of a pay.
That's right. And if they don't get an increase in pay, then they don't participate in the program.
Got it. So that's another way to put it. Right. That's true. So in that's a great recruitment and retaining tool, and it's the right thing to do. We don't have a national, medical program that everybody can be a part of. So it's really left up to, especially agencies don't give anything most of the time.
To your point, when you were talking about the big corporate agencies, and exactly, because the margins are tight and the investors are calling for more.
Yes. And here you can make that decision, which makes you, it's such a privilege to be able to do that for you. It's such a privilege. And
we're excited to do it.
Yep, totally agree. Jay, this has been an absolute pleasure to have you on here, because we got to learn about how it works, how difficult it is, or how challenging it is even to go paint a ship. As simple as that sounds, that's I paint ships. Oh gosh, let me tell you how I got to that ship. That's a story in itself. And you could probably do animations on this stuff. This is what it takes for me to go, do this. Then to know about safety at a level I never knew. We've been in light industrial for 30 years. And I did not know that they were different color hats with different roles. No clue. We just figured that out. And then knowing that industry itself keeps reinventing itself by doing more and more, by getting better hats, how they fit on your head, what's going to occur. I'm sure there's something to do with temperature. It controls in there because it gets too hot, too cold. So these are the things, and I believe there'll always be people, whether AI comes at a full rate or doesn't come, the company that still answers the phone, the company where someone still shows up, a company where I can actually know who the heck I'm working for and working with is always going to be a gold standard.
Well, let's hope that's the case. Sammy, TJ, it's been a real pleasure. I really appreciate you making the time for me, and I've enjoyed the conversation.